The Democratic Socialists have scored in local and national elections. Are they the new political force in the nation? The Point starts right now. Grace Mausser is co-chair of New York City Democratic Socialists of America, and she's celebrating a big victory. The DSA has had a number of successes both locally and nationally. Tell me, what I'm sort of interested in is what's next?
Well, what's next is we have to adjust to having these new socialist elected officials in office. So our cohort in Albany in the state legislature has grown from 9 to 15. So we need to get staff for the new members, acclimate them, and make plans for what we want to do in 2027. And then with our congressional delegation, that hasn't necessarily filled out yet. There are still some contests that we're waiting on in other cities across the country, but we need to do a similar thing with them, bring them together, discuss what our plans are for 27 and 28. But it's a really collaborative process, and that's one thing that makes our endorsement distinct. We really expect and build infrastructure to enable the elected officials to talk with the organization, not only the leaders, but also the members at large.
But I'm wondering, what kinds of changes, for example, would you like to see in Albany now that you have 15 people?
Well, this past year, we had a Tax the Rich campaign, which I would say had some success. It wasn't a home run, but we did get a pied-à-terre tax through. However, to really fund things like fully affordable universal childcare, we know that we need a lot more revenue at the state level. So we will almost certainly be running a revenue campaign again. There's a lot of energy as well behind regulation and kind of understanding the scope of what is happening around AI. And that's something that might be on the agenda in Albany. But there's really a kind of expansive things, but revenue and making sure we can fund the state that we deserve is core.
So I guess the question is this: if you listen to a lot of businessmen, I'm sure you hear their complaints, and they basically say, you tax us, we're going to leave, and you're going to be left with nothing. How do you react to that?
I mean, we raised taxes in 2021, and they didn't leave. They're still here. The fact is that I think New York and the city that working class New Yorkers have built actually have a lot of leverage. It's the center of finance. It's the center of capital. People want to do business here. In fact, they must. So I think in large part it's an empty threat. We've seen that when we raise taxes in the past, they don't leave. And I really don't think most companies will just want to leave New York. It's the center of the economic world.
But yeah, migration is a really big problem for New York. In fact, it's been such a problem over the years that we've seen a constant dwindling of the number of Congress people that we have in Washington, and it's expected that we'll lose 2 more in the next census. So going from 26 to 24, and that affects our power in Washington. So people are leaving. So you're telling me that the rich aren't leaving, just the people who can't afford to live here?
Absolutely. I mean, we know that over the last decade, over 200,000 Black households have left New York. By and large, those are not CEOs and billionaires and multimillionaires. They're working class New Yorkers that have been pushed out because of rising rents, of rising grocery prices, of rising childcare costs. These are the people who are leaving New York. It's not the millionaires and billionaires. It's working class people who have roots here, who build communities here, and then we don't do anything to make the city that they built accessible to them. So
I guess I'd like to ask you what you think the basic appeal of the DSA is. I know you've been getting a lot of support from younger voters. What are they coming to you for? What arguments that appeal to them?
Yeah, we definitely, I think, are more popular with people under 45 or so, but we certainly have a membership and a base across all demographics. But really, I think millennials and Gen Z in particular see as they come of age, and millennials are into middle age by now, they see that what we were told as children and teenagers about what would be accessible to us if we worked hard and did all the right things is simply not true. The economy isn't working. It doesn't matter if you have a college degree or you went to trade school or you did all the things that you were supposed to do. Housing costs are much higher than they ever were for our parents. People can't afford to buy homes for their first families. They can't afford to send their kid to the childcare options that they want to be able to send them to. And I think this makes people realize that what we need and deserve is a government that steps in and steps up and takes a handle on the economy and makes it more democratic for everyone. And so they're, I think, increasingly turning to the ideas of socialism and the policy platforms that we go forward.
So are you basically saying it's frustration with the lack of affordability?
I think that's a lot of it. And I would also add that I think recently the second election of Donald Trump really, I think, made clear to a lot of people who were perhaps, more centrist, identified as liberal Democrats, see that the strategy that the leadership of the Democratic Party was taking to fight the right wing was just not working. It was not working so much, in fact, he won the popular vote in 2024. And maybe we need a new strategy and bolder ideas.
Do you want to change the Democratic Party from the inside or the outside?
Well, both and, I think, right? We obviously run as Democrats, and the elected officials that are in office are committed to being democratic socialists, but they're also going to caucus with Democrats. But we also want to build a strong outside movement, and I think that's in large part where we depart from Democrats. We want unions to be bigger and stronger. We want organizations like DSA and other community organizations to be bigger and stronger so that people, like regular working class people, are empowered and feel that they can make a change in the political process.
But one of the appeals of DSA also has been the Free Palestine movement. Is that part of what you think has brought so many people to your party?
Yeah, I think of it as two spheres of people that have been activated by Palestine. There's a core of people, particularly young people, for whom this has been, so far, the politicizing issue of their lives. They are extremely motivated by Palestinian liberation, and they become a core of volunteers for groups like DSA, but also for candidates like Daria Litza.
Do you think it adds, though, to the anti-Semitism that we've seen increasing in the country?
No, I think you can definitely fight for Palestinian liberation and be very critical of the Israeli government without being anti-Semitic. And DSA is proud to have many Jewish leaders and to work with groups like Jewish Voices for Peace and Jews for Racial and Economic Justice that believe that the Israeli government is committing genocide and also believe that the left can and must fight anti-Semitism at home. An anti-Semitism that I'll say is being primarily perpetuated by a white supremacist right-wing political movement that we are committed to fighting.
So would you accept Israel as a Jewish state, or do you think it should be, there should be a two-state solution? What's your view on that?
DSA doesn't have an official view, but I share Mayor Mamdani's view that Israel should abide by democratic norms, by international human rights law, and have equal rights for all citizens that live there.
But are you looking for a second state, a Palestinian state, its own?
DSA doesn't have a role on that. I would defer to Palestinian people and Israeli people on the ground to figure out how they want to move forward in a democratic and collective way.
And do you think it's going to that's the view that most people in DSA have?
That's a good question. DSA definitely has a broad tent. There's people with a lot of different views. I would guess it's where most people are. But of course, there are always people on Twitter who might say one thing or the other.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. Up next, we'll be talking all things Bronx with Borough President Vanessa Gibson. Vanessa Gibson is the Bronx Borough President. I have to ask you, what's the single biggest challenge facing the Bronx today?
Wow, just one issue?
Well, all right, start with one.
Well, I would say that we are struggling when it comes to creating more jobs and lowering the unemployment rate and lifting families up. Public safety is an ongoing, process and partnership. And then I would say just lack of opportunity. We have to do more to create spaces for jobs, economic development, and tourism.
Do you think that the Bronx gets its fair share of city resources?
No.
So what are you going to do about it?
Every year I work with the administration and the city council and fight for more resources, from park staff to more housing opportunities, home ownership, creating more spaces, parks, recreation, youth development, to keep people safe, but to also give our families more choices, right? This is about options, how we lift families up in a real way.
So let's talk about housing. Do you think that the right kind of housing is being built in the Bronx today?
So far, we're at a great pace. We've done a tremendous amount in the South Bronx, and now we're seeing a lot of development happening in Wakefield, in the Northwest Bronx, the Fordham Community High Bridge, the South Bronx. It has to be responsible and balanced. It has to recognize that families are living below the federal poverty level. They are rent burdened, spending over 30% of their income towards rent. And I also am a firm believer in home ownership pathways. That's what builds the middle class. So it has to be affordable, mixed use, mixed income for a broad range of families, and also home ownership.
But you have a situation where rents are rising,
yes,
and people are screaming, I can't afford it. So how do you find a mix where you can have more housing and not lose people who feel they have to leave the Bronx?
Right. Well, I think it's a process. You're working with the administration, HPD, HDC, HCR, right? All these different acronyms, right? When it comes to financing, when it comes to term sheets, and what's available for developers. First, you have to have the right developer that has the mindset of investment in the Bronx. Many of our developers today already have buildings in the borough. They have a presence. They have a track record, right? Good, bad, and different. And it really is about matching our priorities along with developers, elected officials, and the local community, right? That should always be first on our agenda. It comes with amenities. It comes with large-scale apartments. So I don't support any project that does not have a minimum 30% total 2- and 3-bedroom units, because we need large apartments for growing families of today and tomorrow. And mixed use. So I say veterans, I say foster youth, and I also say we don't do enough for seniors. Older adults need housing too.
So what about the idea of, some wealthy neighborhoods fight getting affordable housing? Should wealthy neighborhoods have to take the affordable housing as well?
Absolutely. Every neighborhood should do its fair share. Many communities of color, working class families have done a lot more than others. And I represent many of those neighborhoods as well that have a NIMBY approach that say not in my backyard. We are talking, they don't sometimes even want a 4- or 5-story building because they are low density, they're home ownership. We are asking everyone to do their part. Not everyone has become a homeowner right away. Many of them are tenants, they're renters, and they have a path to home ownership. They have a path to the middle class. So we understand that. We want to raise the bar all the time on the quality and work with responsible developers that understand. Community centers are a part of this conversation, early child care, supermarkets, which I support, because we're talking about building neighborhoods, Marcia. We're talking about investing in the people. That includes children. It includes recreational space. So I also ask for those amenities as well.
No, but you have a situation where the Bronx has a number of neighborhoods where there are homes.
Correct.
So do you think that building a large apartment building in those neighborhoods would change the essential character of some of those neighborhoods?
I recognize the character of a neighborhood is very important. And for the low-density neighborhoods with 1-, 2-, and 3-family homes, I don't think that neighborhood necessarily can absorb a 10- or 15-story building, right? It depends on the zoning and what is allowed. And now with City of Yes, there's much more density that we're seeing. I have been very firm with developers and my elected officials. I do not always support those large-scale projects and developments because they're massive. It is a burden on the local community, the school district, the parks and, recreational spaces. It's a lot. And so I understand when a homeowner says, Ms. Gibson, my neighborhood has changed. Now there's more traffic, there's more trash, there's more people. It's hard to get around. I understand that. And I try to balance my decision as borough president across the board. So if I support a 15-story building in the West Bronx, I have to look at opportunities throughout the borough. And even in neighborhoods that have seen nothing, I scale it. So it may not be 10 stories, but can we get 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, right? And it really does depend on the zoning. Every project has its own merit, and I try to weigh the options of the local community board, the elected officials, what the neighborhood is today, what it could be tomorrow, and balance all that in my recommendations.
So do you worry that people will move out of the Bronx, and what's your strategy for making the Bronx affordable enough so that the people who grew up there can stay there?
I worry about that every day. People are telling me, Ms. Gibson, the city is more unaffordable. I don't feel safe riding the train. The bus is not safe. They just don't feel safe, and they see the violence that is happening in the Bronx, even though citywide we're at, historic lows. If you're a victim of a crime, those numbers mean nothing. So I recognize that in all the work I do, I want people to stay in the Bronx. That's why I'm focused on jobs and building the middle class, supporting responsible development, working with unions and elected officials, and really laying out our strategic plan over these next 4 years as I'm in my second term, and keeping older adults in our borough, the folks from Co-op City, from Riverdale, from the South Bronx, that built the Bronx, and they should deserve to stay and not be pushed and priced out.
So let me ask you this. I was at the press conference when they announced they were splitting the Bronx police precincts into 2 precincts so that you would have more police coverage. But then at that press conference, they said they were going to hire more cops. I think it was 580
200.
cops. So guess what? They decided not to hire the cops as the last moment of the budget. How do you feel about that? And do you feel that that's going to affect the safety of the Bronx, the fact that they're not hiring more cops?
Well, first, I acknowledge that Commissioner Jessica Tisch said that should have no impact on future hiring classes. We just had an academy class graduate about 2 weeks ago, so we got a significant amount in the budget. With Bronx North and Bronx South, we now have 12 precincts divided into 2. We have North and we have South. We have 2 chiefs, and we have several chiefs under that, and we have a better operation, a system that is more manageable and operational across the board. From an investigative perspective, we have more detectives, more civilians, 200 more cops, and we're getting more. That is good, but we know that adding more cops is not the only answer, but it's a critical part of public safety. So I think so far it appears that it's working. I'm not happy that the mayor basically rescinded on his commitment, right? You don't do that as a leader. You say what you mean and you mean what you say. So my hope is that Speaker Menon and the City Council will work in next year's budget to get that budget back and make sure that we do have the ability to hire more officers.
But with safety, it's always the perception
versus
rather
the reality.
than the reality.
Correct.
Do you think that there's a perception of safety in the Bronx? I mean, when I talked to people when I was up there that day, there didn't seem to be a feeling that it was safe.
Right. I realize there's a difference between reality and perception, and I think it's based on who you're talking to, what their relationship is with cops, how much they hear about violence in the neighborhood, what they see on the news. It's all of that coming together. Working with our precinct councils, all 12 across the borough, and PSA 7 and 8, we've built a lot of good relationships in the Bronx, but we still have a challenge when it comes to building more good relationships, but also the presence of actually feeling safe. I would say the Bronx is much safer now than it was 20 years ago. We've come a very long way, but we still have far too much violence. We're not the largest borough, but we make up, nearly a third of the violent crime in the city of New York. And that's a reality. I meet families all the time, traffic violence, domestic violence, and it's painful to work with families that are mourning the loss of a loved one. And we're seeing, again, Marcia, a lot more young people under 21. Horizon, our juvenile detention facility, is at capacity. That is a challenge. I think we have to focus intentionally on youth violence right now.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But our conversations continue right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. Thank you for joining me. Do we need more trillionaires, and do the ultra-rich have greater social responsibilities? New Yorkers are weighing in on your point. Do you think that the world needs more trillionaires?
Oh, no.
No, not at all.
No, I don't. No, absolutely not.
We never need trillionaires.
I don't even know if they actually exist to begin with.
Elon Musk.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
I think he needs to spread his money around, help people.
We need to distribute the wealth a little more equally, yeah.
I'm not a communist, but I think they have too much. They should share a little. More taxes.
We need to think about the working class, and we need to think about people who do regular jobs and who struggle to pay their bills.
The poor are getting poorer, the rich are getting richer. It's a really, really narrow pyramid, I'd say. It's not really good.
I'm on the other side of the fence. I mean, They provide a lot of, jobs and resources and charity, and so I don't really have a problem with it. Do we need more? No.
What do you think about one person having so much money when so many people have so little?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. There's a lot of greed in it.
It's not fair.
I think it's messed up.
It's disgusting, absolutely. Like, Elon Musk, he should share some of it, but there's so many people that are hungry.
I think he earned it. I think he's brilliant, and there'll be more trillionaires. And you know what? There's nothing we can do about it. As long as he gives to charity, provides jobs, creative, he's a genius.
I don't think you can even spend $1 trillion in a single lifetime, so why not help others?
I respect that people work hard and make money, but I think that all of us should have a responsibility to the good of the betterment of society.
I mean, nobody wants to be given a handout, but share.
I think it's great to work hard for money, but I think that if you have so much, you should at least have to donate a little bit of it.
Wealth distribution is necessary, and it's something that we need to have, because an abundance of wealth and no one benefits, what's the point?
What should we do about income inequality?
Make it harder for people to become trillionaires.
There's no solution.
People need to pay their fair share.
We should tax more of the rich, absolutely.
Yeah, we would need to sit down for coffee and unpack that.
Trump should do something about it. Yes.
Definitely a lot of policy change needs to happen.
Raise minimum wage, create jobs for people to not live paycheck to paycheck.
I've done very well. I'm very blessed. I'm lucky, but I also worked really hard for it, and I was really honest. And the way I do it is by giving back.